yeah, thank you to Living Skin Gallery for hosting this event. And this video end up being like archived online. It'll probably end up on like my YouTube page or something like that, along with all the other streams that like went into making this project. But I would be in the gallery itself, but I'm in Miami for Basel, for Nada, for everything. This is like the skyline. We actually like did a show last night in this apartment, um, but that's all covered in the presentation. So I'll just kind of like jump into it. In fact, I'm just gonna pull up a timer so I know how long I'm even going. But I don't think it's gonna take like, it's definitely not gonna take a full hour. But you know, if I ramble, I want to make sure I'm not rambling too much. So this is Paint by Numbers. This is a presentation. I think I told the guys that I was going to do something about kind of like monetization strategies for artists. And yeah, so I'm just going to dive into it. This is kind of like an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to give an introduction to myself. I'm going to talk about this show I did in Harlem recently. I'm going to talk about ideas about success and the painting machine and the success medium. Go into some like optimized systems, ideas about optimization, give you guys an interesting formula that I think will be pretty interesting. And then I'm going to talk about Twitch stream monetization. And then finally, like the ending's all going to be sort of relating to this idea of like speed running and sort of Simpsons hit and run speed running stuff, and collision debug mode, something in that game. But all will be sort of revealed. But that's where we're going, and so let's jump into it. This is a little fun graphic that just gives kind of introduction to who I am, Gunnar Dongieux. First off, I'm an artist, and I consider like my artistic practice to be this ham-fisted performance of a successful artist. And what I mean by ham-fisted is it involves a kind of like tongue-in-cheek attitude. It involves like a sense of play. But I think you're going to get that through the course of this presentation. Secondly, I run an artist-run like project space or a gallery, you might call it. I run it with my partner Carlos Zarita, and we sort of show artists who have these conceptual practices, but who are all sort of bound by this scrappy kind of DIY ethos. And then the third thing about me is that I went to Stanford and I studied art and computer science. And I haven't really like used computer science in my actual like art practice other than some like Blender stuff. But I think it sort of has brought up an interest in optimization, in systems, in different sort of like senses of like networking as well. But to talk about the show in Harlem, this is a show that I just did, I think it was like last week or the week before. And this is there are some crazy boats going on in the river right now. But this is a show that was at the New Uncanny Gallery in Harlem. And my friend, this Chinese curator, Yuan, he approached me and he's like, I want you to do an entire installation in this back office room in the gallery space. There's this space, which is an office, and it's got these crazy, like, striped walls. It was actually the place where they filmed the movie The Joker. So this office space is where his office was. And then the other part of the exhibition space is like this massive kind of empty industrial building. But Yuan approached me with the idea of using that back office space as a studio for the duration of the show, and that would be sort of my work in the show. He sort of gave me like two inputs when thinking about the show. He said, I want to give you like the prompt, like I want you to make a work about alienated labor, this concept of alienated labor, but then I also, like, you need to donate one of the paintings to the landlord at the end of the show. For me, I consider that to be a sort of like conceptual constraint. Thinking of, okay, I have these two inputs, what is going to be the final product that I end up producing using just kind of these two pieces of information? And immediately when he brought up this idea of like donating a painting to the landlord, I said, this is perfect. I literally just did a show in the Chinatown Mall. This was like the last solo show that I did, where at the end of the show, I donated all of the paintings to my landlord. I had just run Pop Gun for a year in the Chinatown Mall. I got to see the whole space sort of shift from being a space mostly filled up with artist-run spaces and small galleries to then entirely sort of like dominated by vintage retail and vintage fashion stores. And this show was kind of pivotal point in my practice where that idea of performing the role of the successful artist, I decided to follow this internet entrepreneur meme mantra that was going around. It was like, tip your landlord. So I decided that as this was my final stint in the space, I would donate all of the paintings as a gesture to Gary Chong, my landlord. And so the paintings themselves were sort of related to this idea of paintings being objects within a sort of economic system. And so they were literally allusions to like coinage. You know, they were made with this tinfoil tape, and on top of it I was painting with sign painters lettering enamel, and you know, presenting them literally as just like these coins that I would leave at the table at the end of the meal or something like that. So there was a penny, there was there was like the 1 cent, there was the 10-cent FDR, there was the 25-cent George Washington, and then there was the 50-cent painting. And so I just done that show, and then this is just like a quick Wikipedia search of what this idea of alienated labor was that UN was telling me about. But the aspects that sort of interested me was this idea that, you know, the artist in this case would be sort of putting forth this labor, this artistic work, this like work to make these artworks. And there was some sort of disconnect between the labor that was happening and the sort of final product that was happening. And maybe there was some kind of like disjuncture between this sort of kind of sense of artistic ownership over the labor itself and the final works being produced. So considering that at the end of this whole exhibition, I was going to have to give one of the paintings to the landlord, I decided to approach that idea as almost thinking of it as like being another like commission painting. And I'm already working on this show that's coming up. I think it's on the 13th. It's in Providence, Rhode Island, but I'm doing all of these commission paintings for that. So rather than adding new work for me to do within this studio residency, I decided to just finish up the work that I was already kind of doing, finishing up these commission paintings, and then just treating that painting that was going to the landlord as being like one more commission painting. And so, you know, it was really important for me not to sort of go against those sort of two initial inputs, not to create anything that was kind of like extraneous, but just to sort of keep it within that idea of this is my studio practice, and that's what I'm sort of putting on display, is that. And I'm not adding any new kind of work for myself, which was conceptually important, but also like just necessary for me to be sane. And so this is a commissioned painting that I'm working on for this woman, and basically my whole show in Providence is made up entirely of commission paintings, and it's approaching, you know, in this sort of performance of a successful artist, the show is a sold out show because all of the paintings have already been sold. They're all commission paintings, and they're not even sort of my ideas that I'm painting what other people want, and I'm painting other people's ideas. So this woman wanted her face on Farrah Fawcett's body, and so that's what I'm painting. But yeah, so these are the two inputs again, and that final product that ended up coming out of those two things was this studio work, the actual like labor itself. So as I was making work in the studio, I started like gathering all the ephemera that went into that labor, that sort of like process, right? I was printing things at home and looking at things and going through ideas and then just bringing them to the studio. And then at the studio, as I was getting ready to sort of exhibit this labor, I decided that it was important for me to sort of frame each piece of ephemera as a work itself, you know, using that same foil tape that I had used in the Chinese mall show, but here framing everything. Like, you know, I gave a podium to all of my sort of like paints and empty cans. I, you know, went through all of my printed notes and F9 through, I treated them as figures. Figures within this kind of like schematic display of what a studio could be. And F9 through 36 right there, that's literally like, you know, 20 something pages of paper all bound together using foil tape, and it was sitting on the desk. On the left, you can like actually see my thought process. I was going through this idea of how do I even display studio work as an artwork in an exhibition. And I was looking at Paul McCarthy's show at Gagosian, where he had this, he's not necessarily a painter himself, but he had this display of what a painter's studio was, and it was this throne, this giant like shrine almost, that was this massive wood structure, and he had this painting that was probably like 20 feet tall or something crazy on there. And I was also looking at Michael Kreber's, I just seen a show at Green of Tali where he had a very interesting line where he talked about, he set out to solve this problem within his studio. And once he solved the problem, he turned off the painting machine and shipped the entire thing to the studio. And so in the actual like gallery display, it was this entire studio, a presentation of the painting machine. And that sort of concept started sticking with me. What is this idea of a painting machine, and can I sort of present the artist studio in that way, almost broken apart and deconstructed, and sort of understand the machine itself by going through it piece by piece. And then that bottom image in that kind of like trio, that's a work by Chaney Thompson. He's another painter that I like, but he's a guy from Louisiana as well, where I'm from. And the title of that work was Study Towards the Creation of an Icon, which is modeled after the relationship between a tenant and a landlord. So these just started off as just these initial ideas, these almost like sketches. But I thought it was, in the same way, I don't know, I thought there was a kind of like sense of vulnerability of sort of just displaying everything that was going on in the studio. As I was filming myself as well, which I'll get to later, I was displaying every single part of my thought process, all of the paints, all of the cheap paints that I was using too, not all sort of like expensive paints, but the entire work was on display. And this ended up being the actual painting that I gave to the landlord. This is, on the left side, it spells out ever. On the right side, it spells out greatest. And as I was in the space working day to day, doing that performance of a successful artist, I thought that this was a moment in which that artist persona, or that successful artist persona, precipitated, or sort of like came to kind of like a thing that I could display within the mode of painting. And this literally is like sort of precipitating because it comes from this Drake Sprite commercial, in which Drake, let me like explain this commercial. Drake is in the booth and it's not working out. It's not flowing, it's not clicking. And he pops open this bottle of Sprite. It hisses and he takes a sip, and he expands out into this cyborg robotic sort of figure, and all the pieces are coming off and Sprite is spewing everywhere, and then it locks back together almost like a transformer, and it all sort of clicks together, and he clicks, and he gets in the booth and he goes, last name ever, first name greatest. And so this hustler persona, this kind of grind set, for me, literally precipitated in that moment of sipping the Sprite. And that's what I ended up painting for the landlords, using also the colors from the wall to spell out like with the letters. And then, thinking again from that earlier solo show, thinking about these paintings as being a currency within an economic and social network, success then becomes this ability to sort of like traverse that network. So I was reading Isabel Graw's The Love of Painting, thinking about painting as this success medium, and I was also looking at that show by Michael Kreber, which for me, it sort of highlighted these like three nodes. There's this node of the artist, there's this node of the audience, and there's this node of the gallery. And the interesting sort of thing is that there's a kind of like system going on. There's like a relationship, a sort of network of relationships that are going on between these central nodes, between artist, audience, and gallery. And I think that kind of like closed system is the painting machine, and you can see it almost as this like subset of an art world system. And so as I was like exploring these ideas and just like, again, these are like sort of like sketches, these aren't what I would normally sort of display as like final works, but the whole thought process of working through this entire problem, that became the work. So these are like some sketches I was doing of Keebler cookie elves and gears, just thinking about mechanistic systems and labor. But we can consider a gallery system, right? Let's say that you are an artist, like all the way on the right, and you want access to a collector in the top left, or you want access to an audience in the bottom left. You might work through a gallerist in order to sort of gain access to those nodes, right? But this is what you end up doing is you sacrifice a certain level of value, right? You are showing with a gallery, and you're sort of agreeing to have them take 50% of the profit, right? Or of the entire cost, right? So an optimized system would actually involve you working directly with a collector base or working directly with an audience. And the reason we have this kind of like system in place right now is because most artists actually don't have direct access to direct access to a collector base, or don't have direct access to an artist, and they have to work through this sort of like secondary thing. So if we consider that this optimized system, like if this is actually like working out, this is like the successful model. This is sort of, that idea of the optimized system. You can use a success model to arrive at that point of optimization. And within my practice, this ham-fisted performance of a successful artist, I playfully adhere to different success models as a way of sort of optimizing. And a success model might be something like a how-to video, and it might tell you how to draw the best Lana Del Rey, or it might be a sort of like guide that you're following of how to get your art in galleries, or it might be like an entire religion like Scientology. And so Scientology is actually like really interesting because it continues that imagery of a mechanistic system. The advice, the sort of sayings, the teachings that go into it are all considered to be technology that you can apply to your actual life. Like if I give you, in Scientology, if I give you this advice and you follow these set of instructions, it's considered to be using technology, even though it's kind of like just like a mantra or a set of, it's a religious doctrine, right? So just as an exercise, I think it would be interesting to go through this like Harlem show and what I ended up doing with this monetization scheme, but through the lens of kind of the Scientology thing. This is the optimized system, right? And again, the issue is that you don't actually have direct access to a collector base or to an audience, and Scientology calls this the condition of non-existence. So, luckily, there's actually like this formula for how to exit a condition of non-existence and to arrive at that sort of state of success and how to get into that sort of optimized system. So this is the formula. This is actually like directly from Ethics and Conditions from the Scientology book, one of the books. It says you need to find a communication line, you need to make yourself known, you need to discover what is needed and wanted, you need to do, produce, and or present it. And again, so with this idea of following a success model, I like to sort of like run you through the Harlem show and this live stream monetization scheme that I set up, but through the lens of going through those kind of basic steps. So this was the live stream scheme that I was doing, where every day within the studio, I was filming myself painting, and I was filming that work, and then I was later doing like a playthrough on Twitch, going through and reliving every day of doing that studio work and presenting that product online. But and that's the title of it, live stream monetization scheme. So if we start with the first step, there's this question of how from this studio in Harlem am I going to communicate with an audience, right? I have this studio space, and the product that I'm working with is this studio labor. How am I going to convey that with an audience? This idea of Twitch then came into play, where I could then just stream this work and disseminate it remotely, and people could just log on to a website and actually just consume this kind of like video of me working, right? There was the second part, make yourself known. So I made this separate TikTok account. I wanted to start with this idea of like a closed system. I didn't want to just funnel people over from my Instagram page. I wanted to start from a position of non-existence. So I started a new TikTok page and tried to just funnel people over to the Twitch stream using these TikTok videos. And they were like super kind of like campy, kitschy videos, like my daily commute, carrying the painting to the gallery space, or making breakfast as I was doing the live stream. But this was like a model that I like pulled from Twitch streamers like Kai Cenat or Sketch. Actually, Drew was the one who actually told me about this. But as I was talking about this idea of like starting like doing this Twitch streaming, I'm like, how can I get people to go over to the Twitch stream? It's like, oh, you got to start a TikTok account and then drive people over to the Twitch stream. So the Twitch streams were only getting about one viewer on their own, but then these TikTok videos were getting like 700 views, just like starting from nothing, you know? The third part, discover what is needed and wanted. Again, that product that I was doing was the artistic labor, but what people were actually tuning into the Twitch streams to see was that product of me actually painting day to day in the studio. And to kind of like go one sort of step within that system itself, like the paintings I was working on were these commission paintings where someone explicitly told me what they needed and wanted. And so I was painting other people's ideas, inherently knowing that whatever I made, this person would genuinely love. Like, this is an engagement photo. Showed you that portrait of the woman earlier. There was another sort of like family painting in the red room. And then 4 is actually doing it, producing it, and or presenting it. And so this was the final video that I did from that presentation, and this was actually at the opening. I filmed the entire 4 hours. Oh my God. The motorcycles are crazy. I filmed the entire 4-hour opening and actually captured what people said about the works. They were just in the space talking to each other, and I got to like sit in my apartment the morning after and relive the entire opening. Even though I was walking around talking to people, I got to hear what everyone was sort of thinking, and got to sort of convey this. If the final exhibited work was my studio practice exhibited, I got to convey that even on the Twitch stream to the sort of remote audience as well. So again, the product being the studio work, I was exhibiting pre-sold paintings. I wasn't getting any sort of like extra juice from those. One of the paintings was being given to the landlord, and this was a free exhibition. People were coming in, they're not like paying an entrance fee or something like that. I started to think of, okay, what are ways in which I can actually sort of find a kind of benefit from this? Like a sort of, I guess the easiest thing to do was find a monetary benefit for this within this sort of like scheme of optimization. So I approached this idea of monetization. How can I actually get paid for the studio work? How can I turn this product, and if I'm not selling it like a painting, how can I sell the studio work? And I actually found out that through Twitch, there's a whole sort of like system where you can actually become a monetized streamer. And it involves these things. It involves becoming an affiliate. And becoming an affiliate only requires 4 steps. You need to reach 50 followers. You need to stream for 8 hours a day. You need to stream on 7 different days. And you need to reach an average of 3 viewers. And if you do these pretty like basic steps, what you get access to is cheering with bits, hype chat, which involves like an audience, but you also get access to subscriptions and ad revenue. So in theory, you will literally get paid for just, in this case, I would get paid for just doing my day-to-day studio practice. So that was the final sort of live stream monetization scheme. Get paid for just doing the work that I already had to do. Again, there was these sort of like constraints. It was crunch time. I was in New York for only a week. before the show opened, like that Saturday. I got access to the space on a Tuesday. I had to make everything for the initial kind of like opening, even though I had access to the space for the whole show. I had to make everything for the opening within that kind of like 1 week. And then right after the opening, I was actually going to the DR to be with my girlfriend's family for Thanksgiving, so I wouldn't have access to the space. Then I was going to Miami, which I am now, we're now in the present time, where I had to sculpt this Diplo sculpture. For 3 days, I had 3 days to sculpt this entire life-size body of Diplo for this exhibition that just happened last night in this apartment, which was a proposal for Diplo's house. And if you think about it in terms of like that optimized system, rather than sort of relying on a collector to sort of come and just inherently sort of be enthralled by a work or have to work through a gallerist, we pitched Diplo works specifically for him. All the artists made works directly for Diplo. Me making this giant cast of him on a DJ booth. But after this, then I'm going straight to New York and finishing this commission painting that I have to do in order to bring it to Providence, Rhode Island, where I'll be actually like driving from New York to Providence with my dad and my 93-year-old grandfather and Carla, and we're all gonna put all the paintings in a car and just drive. All this to say, I won't actually have access to that studio space. And so everything that I was going to do in terms of producing that product, which would be monetized, I had to do in that 1 week. And this brought me to the idea of speedrunning. So when I was first introduced to Twitch, I knew it was this kind of thing that people were using for video game streaming, where they would stream themselves playing video games and they would have an audience and people would sort of watch them. And I immediately just like looked up Simpsons Hit and Run because that's my favorite video game. Like growing up, I played it on the GameCube and like it must have been like 4th grade or something like that. And I found that there's actually like a very vibrant, thriving community of people who are doing this as a living and every single day playing the same game over and over with the sole intent of beating the game as fast as they can. Now, in 4th grade, this game took me about like probably like 8 months to finish, right? These guys are finishing the entire game in under 2 hours. And you can see on the left, each individual sort of mission is given a sort of like a best time that they can complete it in, and they're sort of racing against that kind of like best time. And all of those are red over there, but if they are ahead of time, it becomes like green, and that's how they sort of like compete for this world record, like who can get the fastest time. And this is actually a graph that shows the history of Simpsons Hit and Run speedrunning. And that guy up in the top left corner, he's this dude named Liquid Wi-Fi. And you see that whole blue section? For a solid like 6-year stretch, this dude named Liquid Wi-Fi held the world record. And he was competing against himself, just shaving off seconds and seconds and minutes of this like best time. And it's crazy too, like you'll go an hour into this speed run and then you like fuck up in one turn or something like that, and the whole run is done. Like they're literally shaving off seconds of time on each individual mission, and there's 7 worlds. Each one has like 10 sort of like levels within that world, and they're doing it all in sort of like one shot. And as a result, there's optimized paths within these speedrun games, right? There's these things called strats, which are not only strategies of, okay, I found the best route that you have to take in order to collect all the donuts in time. You know, you have to take this turn, you have to go around this car that comes in at like in the 2-second mark, you know. But there's these individual like glitches that people have found that save like a whole minute worth of time, which is like an insane amount of time on the scale of these speedruns, right? One such strat was this thing called Carl Skip, and it involved, there was this one part where you have to talk to this dude Carl before you start this race, and you could push him through the doors of a power plant with your car, And if you talked to him after you pushed him into the power plant, then you could glitch on the other side of the power plant door and actually go around the map reversed and go to the end of the race, basically from the other side of the track. And that ended up saving you, I think, like, again, just a minute worth of time, right? To show that these strats are also evolving. There then came another strat, that was the predominant strat probably for like the first 5 years of this game. There came another strat, which was called Carl Skip Skip, and it involved not actually pushing him with the car, but actually just putting the car through the door of the power plant first and doing some sort of glitch. But that saved another kind of 30 seconds or so, something like that. I was also looking at games like Ed, Ed, and Eddie, where the strats were, this is a game where you can complete the entire game in 45 seconds. So each individual 45 minutes. So each individual second became all that more valuable. And, in Simpsons Hit and Run, you can get caught against a tree and sort of reverse, and you can still make the world record. Within this game, you have to do everything kind of perfect to hit it. There's this one glitch within this Ed, and Eddie speedrunning game, or within this Ed, and Eddie speedrun, in which you, Ed, and Eddie get in this triple formation on this one rock, and if you hit it at just the right angle, your dude will actually float through the map and reach the next spawn point. And the game sort of has this glitch where it thinks that you've already sort of passed through the level and you've reached that spawn point. However, this glitch, this strat, comes at the 30-minute mark of the entire game. So you can go a whole 30 minutes through the speedrun, and if you fuck up on this one glitch, you have to start the whole thing over. So many speedrunners actually choose to avoid this entirely. They're like, I've had a great run, I'm on pace to actually make the world record. I'm not gonna waste my time and try to or not waste my time. I'm not gonna try to get that extra 30 seconds or so with doing this glitch if, the risk is way too high. So this just to say that sometimes the optimized strat doesn't actually get you the best run. And I don't think the world record for Ed and Eddie actually uses that glitch strat anyway, even though it would be the optimized path. So this, to close out the Harlem show, these are the sort of results of this live stream monetization scheme that I set out. This idea of monetizing my art practice using Twitch stream. The goal was to become a Twitch affiliate, to reach 50 followers, to stream for 8 hours, to stream on 7 different days, and to reach an average of 3 viewers. What I ended up actually achieving was, yes, I streamed for 11 hours. I, ended up getting all the different days, right? But I only averaged about 1.1 viewer per video, and I only ended up getting 6 followers rather than 50. So, it was kind of a failure in that regard. And I ended up actually looking up after. I was like, okay, let's just consider for a second that I had actually done it. Let's consider I got the 50 followers, that I averaged the three streamers or whatever. What would have been the kind of payout for it? How much would they have paid me for just painting in my studio? And a quick look on Reddit actually discovered that I would probably only be making at max probably $200 a year for consistently streaming every day. So this guy was making $6. What some people mostly said was, it sort of is contingent on how active your actual Twitch audience is. And those subscriptions, almost like a Patreon kind of thing, actually provide most of your income that you're doing. It's not actually mostly coming from ad revenue. So you can sort of view this entire thing of not only was it a failure in terms of I didn't meet the metrics, but it was kind of a worthless pursuit in which even if I had done it, it wouldn't have been worth it. If you consider that initially I was going to live stream the whole thing from the studio space, but they didn't have Wi-Fi, and I didn't want to pay $30 for a modem to go in there. And so I decided to instead do playthroughs of the videos, like record the whole studio session, and then in my apartment the next morning, watch the whole thing on stream, like a live video playthrough. So I was actually doing not only a full day's worth of studio work, but I was also adding an entire, like doubling it basically. So I was doing double the work, also making these TikToks, spending time and labor into putting this thing. You're thinking of a lot of the sort of like back-end operations that just go into maintaining an art practice that don't actually contribute to this like final product in terms of its value, but are just kind of like empty calories. But I think that a kind of interesting way to think about the whole experiment is to sort of like go into this idea of this collision debug mode within The Simpsons Hit and Run. I'm gonna pull up this video for it while I sort of like talk about it. So this is a modded out version of The Simpsons Hit and Run. You can access this mode from within any sort of like PC Simpsons Hit and Run game, and speedrunners will actually use this in order to kind of like Liquid Wi-Fi on a stream like 2 days ago or something like that, like got fed up with this one car that just started behaving erratically and totally ruined his whole speed run on like level 6, like right before he was about to finish an amazing run, right? He's like, why is this car going this direction? And so he actually did this, and this is the developer mode where you can see the kind of like schematic breakdown of every kind of object within the map. If we go a little bit further into the video, you can even see that it gives you data on the direction and acceleration and all the basic stats of every object within the game, and you can see what path a car is following. This is also the mode that they use in order to discover new strats. This is the mode that they use to figure out, there's a sort of like a disjuncture between these two planes, between these two walls, and if I hit this at this speed, I can actually glitch outside of the map, right? And people will spend hours and hours in this collision debug mode, just like fucking around. Like, he's flying through the map in this car, and it seems on the surface to be this kind of useless wandering around. But I think the argument that I'd like to make is it's that this kind of aimless wandering, this will never become an optimized speedrun route. This will never become like a best time. But if it ends up discovering a kind of unique strat that can shave off 20 seconds, 30 seconds from a speedrun, that work will have been valuable. And I think that's the kind of framework that I'm viewing the whole monetization scheme from, how I'm viewing the whole performance of a successful artist from, and following these success models, is that yes, there is this kind of like productivity or non-productivity conversation going on, but the aimless wandering ends up having some sort of inherent value. Yeah. And I guess that's kind of where I'll leave it at with this presentation. If there's any questions from the Living Skin gallery, you can put it in the actual Twitch chat, or, oh, Allison, woo! Or Allison, you can FaceTime me if you want. But, or we could just sort of like end it on that, and you can get ready for the next presentation. So whatever you guys want. We do Twitch. Sick. I also like doing this presentation within Twitch, because this was what I was doing every single day during that kind of like live stream scheme. So to do the presentation within the mode that, it's like doing a presentation, it's like painting a presentation about painting or something like that. Sweet. Thank you, G. Thank you guys so much, and I hope the rest of the presentations go great. Oh, thank you for the hair. Oh wait, you guys want a quick little tour of the show, the Diplo show? Let's see. There's a dude sleeping on our couch. He's gone. Where is he at? What's up, Big Skeeter? So this was the Jimmy Raskin work in the show. This was the giant Diplo thing, which had LED lights around it. Did Diplo like it? We found out that Diplo actually left for Vegas the night of the show, you know? And so he actually didn't get to see it. But one of the artists, this artist Kea, actually like knows him from some strange, weird kind of like world. So people were tagging him all last night. This is a painting by Alex Both. We have this giant airplane wing that Darius made. A whistle for Diplo as well. This was made by the artist Joey Frank. Have you played a speed run? Let's see. I actually haven't played a speed run. I feel like I would really enjoy it. I think I would do the Simpsons Hit and Run. Like if that guy Liquid Wi-Fi can make a whole career just off of doing that one game and never get sick of it. But I don't know. I think I'm more into the idea of the Wander right now. Do you have to stream 8 hours a day? Or just reach 8 hours? No, you just have to reach 8 hours of streaming, you know? Anytime you play a game, you technically speedrun it. That is true. You might just have like a horrible time or just like not rank on the leaderboards. Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate that so much. Yeah. Yeah. Best art lecture. Thank you so much, Big Skeeter. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And thank you for the hair compliments. Yeah, last night was the opening, and so to wake up early for you guys and do this, I've no place I'd rather be. Okay. I'm gonna log off. Peace.